Hi, everyone. My name is Imran Ahmed. I'm Chief Executive. I'm founder of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. We've got a really interesting guest today. And just by way of background, I mean, anti-Semitism is one of the oldest and most pernicious of evils on this planet. It's, whether it's the blood libel 2,000 years ago, the protocols of the Elders of Zion in the 20th century, or today the Great Replacement theory, the lies that underpin hate against Jews has ended with the most awful atrocities and horrors visited upon people. And it is a constant reminder to us of the need to continue to fight against hate, to fight for tolerance. I'm really excited today to have in a conversation and to hear from Beth Lane, who's the director of UnBroken, now streaming on Netflix in the US. And I just want to get straight into it. So, Beth, thank you so much for being here. For those who haven't yet seen UnBroken, can you share a quick overview of what the film's about?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And these are the kinds of conversations that one of the reasons I made the film UnBroken, so we could bridge these conversations. But UnBroken is about 7 siblings who survived the unthinkable. And it's a deeply personal story. The youngest of the 7 is my mom. And she and her 6 siblings survived 2 years in hiding 60 kilometers east of Berlin during the Shoah. And they're the only family of 7 known to have survived together and then emigrated to America together. So their story is quite remarkable. And the film is really my personal quest to try and uncover all of the upstanders along the way who enabled their survival.
That's incredible. I'm actually one of 7. I'm the eldest of 7 myself.
Nice.
So, telling such an intimate family story must have come with enormous emotional weight. And as a director, sort of creative choices. What were some of the challenges or the surprises that you faced in making this film?
I mean, the first challenge is that this is my directorial debut. It's the first film I've ever made. So walking into it truly blindly was the biggest mountain to climb. That being said, I've been an actor my entire career. So I've been on many film sets. I've just never been on the other side of the camera. And I think I allowed my complete and sheer naivete to really carry me through. Just knowing that I could do it as an actor. I'm really good at faking it till I make it. And I just pretended to be a director who had to make a gazillion decisions all day long. And until I became that director who was making all of those decisions. And as time would go by, different discoveries would resonate more deeply with me or not. So in the beginning, we were asking the question on the street. I was kind of doing DocsBox. I was, putting microphones in people's faces and saying, would you hide me? Literally, which felt for some people, I was never kind of like a Michael Moore style, in your face, answer me now. There was always an invitation. Would you like to talk to me? I have a question for you. It was pretty gentle. We'd always get releases from people to sign, but it really evolved into something that became much more vulnerable and a lot more personal. And I'm really pleased with how audiences are responding to the very nature of the fact that this is not an historical film. It's not a political film. It's not a religious film. It really is a spiritual quest to understand what it is inside of us that can enable our muscles of empathy and compassion and courage and bravery.
That's so interesting and incredible to hear, because I think that, in a very different way, running an organization like CCDH, which is an advocacy organization, we're storytellers too at CCDH. And I find that spiritual aspect of researching, thinking about, and then telling a story, hearing the feedback, iterating on it, actually changes the way I see myself. I see myself as a father. I see myself as a member of the community and as a citizen. Were there any discoveries in your research or your interviews that changed the way that you saw your family story or even your own identity?
Yes, I would say that growing up, this is not a story that I knew much about. I knew that my mom had 6 siblings. I knew that she was adopted. I knew eventually at some point in my young life that she was a Holocaust survivor, but she never led that way. She never talked about herself as a survivor. She never referred to herself as a refugee or someone that was persecuted. And in the research and also in the filming, the biggest discovery I think I really made was that there's no question that she and all of them are truly Holocaust survivors and were deeply, horribly persecuted in different ways. And not every survivor was in a concentration camp. My mother always felt that the survivors of the camps were the ones that should be telling the story. She didn't feel like she could really own her own story. And subsequently, as her daughter, I never felt it was my story to tell. And this process has given me the permission and the grace and also the responsibility to tell the story. Because if it's not told now, it will be lost forever. My mom is the youngest and she's 85 years old. And I think that for myself, it's also given me a big, deep dive into my own understanding of what it means to be the recipient of intergenerational transfer of trauma. And what do you do with that? Some people have that and don't know that they have it, and they act out in the world in different ways that aren't really beneficial or helpful to other people or to themselves. And sometimes I would find that in my own behavior and kind of question it. Why am I behaving like that over something so silly? But I've been able to kind of look it square in the eye and really make choices about how I want to react. The only thing we have control over in life is how we respond to the things around us. So for me, the opportunity to take what I think psychiatry today, psychoanalysis today calls intergenerational transfer of trauma was to make lemonade out of lemons. Like, let's do something positive with that, and let's use it as a healing salve as opposed to something that just continues to foment internal turmoil, things like that.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I'm really aware of, because we do work on anti-Semitism and we understand the weight that has. If you touch the issue of anti-Semitism, you understand that at the core of it, the evil that is most profound, that is the greatest warning bell, is the Holocaust, the Shoah itself, which is a monumental evil, the likes of which the earth has never seen before and will never, and God willing, will never see again. And I'm cautious not to use metaphors from that period or language from that period to describe what's happening today. I don't like it when people get, when the sort of the throwing around of the term Nazi or Holocaust. We have to. It's painfully vulgar, to be frank. But while telling a story that's rooted in the past, I'm sure you must have found yourself reflecting at times on how those same forces, prejudice, hate, scapegoating, still echo in today's world. Could you tell me more about what you saw, how you felt?
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I concur with everything you've just said. I never in my lifetime thought that my family's story would have the resonance in today's landscape as it's having. And certainly when I started making the film, it began as really just a personal passion project for my children. And it's still for my children. And it's still for my family, a gift to my family. And I'm definitely a go big or go home kind of person. So I always knew that it wasn't going to stay internal. I knew that it would have a life somewhere else. I certainly wasn't even imagining Netflix, which is extraordinary. And I think that we all have to really stop and pause before we react to the sheer, there's no other word that I can think of, idiocy of what is going on around us. And we can choose to engage in it or not. We can choose to help fuel the fire that is happening over in their circus of how they're trying to get our attention or not. So how do we want to engage with that? And particularly because so much of our lives now have become digital. Many of us have chosen to receive our news online, or we have replaced the regular postal service with email. So it's, I think, a little naive to say, well, just don't go online. You know, our lives are online today. And sure, there are many cultures, perhaps, and communities that spend far less time online than perhaps I do or you do. But it's become a way of life. And how do we want to engage when we're online is really up to us.
Well, I mean, you know, as you know, at CCDH, we research how online hate, especially anti-Semitism, is rising again in digital spaces, how that's become the modern vector for this ancient evil, this virus that seems persistent and difficult to end completely. Has that idea of, has online hate come up in conversations around the film or influenced how you think about even sharing stories like yours today? Because of course, digital spaces are really important, not just for bad actors, but also for telling important stories like yours.
Yes, I mean, I do curate what we put online. We're very careful about what we put online, and we also want to make sure that everything I repost, for example, is something that's positive.
Right.
And I think that it's great that there are so many activists out there that are actually posting the stuff that's reposting things that are toxic, because we need to see that it's there so that we can avoid it or we can understand what's going on out there. But that's a choice that I've made to not repost. And I really am only looking for the stories that will encourage other people to want to do the right thing and be a contributing member of society. We need the other stuff, but it's also really easy for us to go into this rabbit hole of the digital world and think that that's the reality of everything around us. I'm happy to say that we haven't encountered anything horrible yet. I've gotten the occasional, you know, person that I've had to block or unfriend or something, because it just, I'm not someone who wants to cancel anybody, because to me, those are the bridges, those are the conversations that we want to have. But if it's clear that someone is just on our stream or whatever to be a disruptor, that's not positive for anybody. And you know, the biggest concern that I have right now, really just for my baby, my movie, is I can tell on some of the review platforms where you get stars and reviews, and you can look at the analytics about who's giving you the different stars and so forth. There's one platform in particular where we aren't even at a 9 or a 10, which is so ridiculous, because the movie, it's a beautiful movie and it only has a positive message. And so I know that there are bad faith actors giving us ones intentionally, and they're grouped in certain countries. And I'm not going to say which countries they are, but it's just so obvious what they're doing. It's like, oh my gosh, really? That's how you want to spend your time today? You want to take down this little indie film that is only out there to actually touch your heart. So they haven't even watched the movie. They just see the word Holocaust probably in our log line or synopsis, and all of a sudden they're responding that way.
Well, you know, I think it's really important that we do get this. It's why we're so delighted to be able to sort of talk about this film today and encourage people to go and see it. And that title, UnBroken, really speaks to your strength, but the strength of the people that you are focusing your camera on and their survival. What does that word mean to you, UnBroken? What do you hope audiences, especially young people, walk away with after watching the film?
You know, this family, what they survived and how they endured decades and decades of all kinds of disenfranchisement or disengagement, you know, and they all were able to come together again for the last 40 years of their lives. It's something that it's so easy for us to get bogged down in the minutia of our disappointments every day. And when you hear it from this family, from these women, about what it is that they're focusing on, it can only inspire you to just say, let's not sweat the small stuff. You know, there's a bigger world out there. And if they can find the positivity and hope in life, then perhaps so can I. But I think the other thing about UnBroken is the world right now is kind of like spinning at warp speed to try and like break a lot of stuff. Everything around us seems to be shattering illusions that we've had about just basic systems, about how things work, whether it's your phone or your computer or checking out the grocery store. Like, we keep getting interrupted. There aren't people to check you out. You have to check yourself out at the airport to pay. And there's an honor system, and that's wonderful. But everything around us is being challenged and broken in a way that we have to really stop and think about, well, is this a helpful thing, or how do I respond to it? And so this notion, I hope for younger people, about the word unbroken is, how do you take something that might not feel good and take a lemon and turn it into lemonade and have a nice long, cool, refreshing beverage? You know, we take the work very, very seriously, but we can't take ourselves so seriously that we don't find the humor and the lightness that life provides. You know, I look out my window right here, and I'm blessed that I get to live in the country, and there are trees and flowers and the sun is shining. And if we don't stop and pause and look at all of that stuff every day, then all of these fractured, broken parts in the world, they're going to get you. And that's no fun.
I have some amazing young people that work for me, and I know that some of them are listening, and I'm sure they will be inspired by those words. You know, they call it touching grass. It's because that's what Gen Z call it. But Beth, thank you so much again for sharing this powerful work. UnBroken is streaming on Netflix in the US right now. And honestly,
Canada as well. Yes.
And don't forget Canada.
Yes,
there's lovely Canucks. And I encourage everyone here in the US and in Canada to watch it, not just to learn about the past, but also, crucially, to better understand the present. Thank you again, Beth Lane.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I really, really appreciate it.